Yo, 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 what's up, all you burners, stoners, and potheads out there? This is Mr. and Mrs. WeedMan of the WeedMan 420 Chronicles. How are you burners, stoners, and potheads doing out there today? The snow is melting away in Chicagoland today. We had great weather, over the 50s this weekend. It was great. The snow was melting, and I'm super happy about it. It's coming off our roof because we had a little leakage, but we took care of it, right, Mrs. WeedMan?
Yes, we did.
Lots of pots and pans dripping, but we took care of that little leak. Hopefully all out there, all your houses are okay. We know across the country there's a lot of crap going on. We hope you're all safe and sound. The weather seems to be getting better. March is upon us, one day away from March, and we're super excited to see it come and see some good weather coming our way. Going to be 50s all next week, and I'm super stoked. So, hey, all you burners, snorers, and potheads there, we want to thank you for listening. As always, we're super stoked where we're growing right now. Mrs. Weedman, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, and I'm actually looking forward to smoking because I'm having a little trouble focusing today.
Ooh, we'll see if this helps.
So I was reviewing all of my articles for this evening and doing some editing, and I, for the life of me, just couldn't read from top to bottom. I was all over. So we will see if the cannabis keeps me on point.
It's a freshly clean bowl that I cleaned today.
Yeah.
Remember, hit it light.
Yeah. That's my other problem.
We never hit the bowl light in this house, that's for sure. But we're super stoked. But let's get into this. 37 members of Congress asked Biden to issue mass cannabis pardons ahead of legalization. As you know, we always talk about the Nonviolent Cannabis Crime Acts here. And so 37 members wrote a letter to Joe Biden, president. 37 members of Congress sent a letter to President Biden on Thursday calling on him to use executive authority to mass pardon all people with nonviolent federal cannabis convictions. They asked for the unique form of presidential clemencies based on the actions taken by President Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter in the 70s to categorically forgive Americans who avoided during the draft of the Vietnam War. In a letter led by Congress Cannabis Caucus co-chairs Earl, I'm going to butcher this dude's name, Blum and Ewer, Democrat Oregon, and Barbara Lee, Democrat California. The lawmakers noted the expansion of the state legal cannabis legalization movement in last year's House vote in favor of the bill to end federal cannabis prohibition. That's good stuff. And with this comes the Congress sends a reform bill to sign, and they have a unique ability to lead the criminal justice reform and provide immediate relief to thousands of Americans, they wrote to President Biden. During the previous tenure, the White House of President Obama understood that decades of harsh and discriminatory federal drug laws unfairly trapped minority individuals and communities in cycles of despair. This letter states to him, your administration has the power to expand on legacy and issues of general pardon to all former federal nonviolent cannabis offenders in the U.S. and triggers resentencing for all those who remain federally incarcerated on nonviolent cannabis-only offenses for activity now legal under the state laws. A general pardon, as the groups are calling for, is distinct from the individual acts of clemency that have been done by the past few presidents. What Carter did in 1977 was issue a proclamation laying out criteria for who would be eligible for the relief. Those who violated the Military Selective Service Act by avoiding the draft in a certain time frame were able, under his action, to submit documentation to show that they qualify and would then be systematically pardoned. The lawmakers also noted that each of the last five presidents have granted relief on a case-by-case basis to people convicted of federal cannabis offenses. Just so you know, that's people writing to the presidents that are in office, asking for clemency, asking to be pardoned. That's how that happens. So a lot of with Obama and Trump, there was a lot of people that were pardoned that were nonviolent cannabis acts in the last couple of presidents. So they want to begin a process of winning the peace in the war on drugs by ending it and working to make whole those who have been harmed, is what Congress is saying. With this, the letter also points out that Biden voiced support for automatic expungement for prior cannabis convictions during his campaign. But while he backs modest reforms like expungements, legalizing medical cannabis, rescheduling cannabis, and letting states set their own cannabis policies, the president remains opposed to adult use legalization. President Biden's leadership on issuing pardons to nonviolent federal cannabis offenders would demonstrate a down payment of his campaign promise to prioritize criminal justice reform and similarly inspire justice-oriented actions in a nonpartisan fashion around the country, Normal Political Director Justin Streckel said in a press release. Shortly after President Biden's election, the House of Representatives voted to end federal prohibition of cannabis, he said. Now, in a new legislative session, President Biden should follow their lead and move to immediate provide relief to those who continue to suffer from criminal record for nonviolent federal cannabis offenses. Among the letters, 37 signatures of House Judiciary Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler, House Rules Committee Chairman James McGovern, and Small Business Committee Chairwoman Nadia Valsquez also signing the petition. On Monday, a coalition of advocacy industry groups made a similar plea to Biden's administration, using President's Day to send a letter urging him to clearly demonstrate your commitment to the criminal justice reform by immediately issuing a general pardon to all former federal nonviolent cannabis offenders. That was a big word. A lot of big words in this article. And I got most of them right, except for one guy's name. And I didn't even smoke yet. And Mrs. WeedMan's going to smoke. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this article because the next one, Cory Booker talks about, he asked Biden to basically disqualify or don't disqualify people from federal aid who have cannabis convictions. So a lot of senators and a lot of congressmen and women are fighting to get nonviolent cannabis victims off the federal list, get themselves pardoned because it's hurting them for maybe having an ounce of cannabis or having getting caught for smoking pot or even dealing in some ways of being a plug or something like that. But they didn't have a gun or they didn't do anything that was really offensive. And now that it's being totally legalized in states, these congressmen and women and senators want to see people get their lives back. And I feel good about it in some ways, but in some ways you have to look at the overall crime. You know, if it's just cannabis crime and now that stuff is being legalized across every state, we're up to 16 states now being legalized. 2 more states just did it, and we'll go through those in a minute. But with that being said, people need to get their lives back. And they need to be able to move forward. We need to be able to forgive what they've done in the past and help them move forward so they can come back into the world and into getting a job and being, if not, they're just going to go back to doing the things they used to do because that's all they know. But we need to help them move forward and be able to get good jobs, maybe get in the cannabis industry because what they know. Also help them, maybe they could work with NORML and be able to come public speakers on what they did and be able to teach the youth not to go down that route. There's other ways now to get into the cannabis industry that's legal that you can make money.
I was wondering about that. Like now that cannabis is recreational, legal, or medical in some states, right?
Yep.
There's still going to be cannabis dealer. There's still going to be your neighborhood dealer,
oh, of
right?
Course, yeah.
So if they're still dealing and it's still illegal, although there are laws that you can't carry like enough to distribute, right? If they get arrested, how are they are they tried as?
It's up to the state and how the state laws like.
I mean, they might outsmart it by only carrying when they go to do a run and deliver weed. They carry
a lot of
legal
times
amounts
it's
of them,
decriminalized in an ounce or less, and that's what they're finding with people who are dealing still that they're only catching with an ounce.
So then they can't arrest them.
They can.
After so many warnings, maybe.
Right. And in some states, it's like the first warning, you get a written warning. The second time you get caught, it's a fine. The third time you get caught, you can get jail time.
Okay.
So, but let's smoke.
Yeah.
We're smoking our own homegrown again. Super excited about this homegrown because I got some results back on it. And what was dope about this is I had 16 terpenes in this. And one of them I had never heard of. It was, beginning with an F, it comes from anise or fennel, and it was like 29%, and it's very, very medicated. And I don't want to butcher the name. I'll get it to you guys in another episode, or I'll post it on our Instagram and stuff. But super excited about this strain. It wasn't very high THC content. It was only like 14%. But the terpene content was absolutely huge. Mrs. WeedMan, it was a clean bowl, so she got whacked.
I have not been smoking for a couple weeks. Well, except for the last time we recorded. I think that's the last time I smoked.
Yep, you've been eating edibles a lot lately.
And you can hear my wonderful cough.
Yeah, Mrs. WeedMan sometimes asthma,
Yeah.
slight asthma, certain times of the year.
I know. Don't judge me. I smoke.
Her lungs get a little bit messed up certain times of the year when the seasons change. So lately she's been dialing back her smoking and going more towards edibles.
I'm just trying to like dial in the whole edible thing because I only consume or smoke in the evening, and I'm oftentimes working into the evening, so I don't want to take my edible so late at night that then I don't even feel the effects of it before I've gone to bed, but I don't want it to interfere with my work. So it's kind of trying to hone in on that, like what's the right time to take it.
Right.
And
that's true.
yeah. So, and that's where I fall back into like, oh, I might as well just smoke because then I just know I'm going to feel it.
Within 15 minutes, you're baked. It's hard when you like tough, smoking, and Mrs. WeedMan and Mr. WeedMan really do enjoy smoking, especially our own cannabis, but we also enjoy edibles. Mrs. WeedMan made a batch of edibles from the trim that I had, and it came out really good, and she's been eating those every night. But you got to think, once you take an edible, you got to wait an hour and a half. So she's been doing half around, 8, 9 o'clock?
Probably around 9:30. Yeah, 9 o'clock.
And then when it starts,
10:30.
that half starts kicking in, you eat the other half. As we've talked about, go low. Start slow and go low. So and Mrs. WeedMan doses that way, and they're probably, what would you say, the edibles that we made? They're like,
I think they're like 10 milligrams.
10 milligrams. So you're dosing 5 and 5. Mm-hmm. So, and how do you feel after you dose the 5 and 5?
Sometimes I don't feel it until I'm like laying in bed, and then it's like, oh, okay, there it kicked in.
Yeah.
But 5, I like eating half of the edible and then the other half, an hour and a half later. It just doesn't all hit you at once, and then it kind of carries you through.
It's more of a smooth transition, yeah. Well, I will say this, because I sleep next to you every night. You've been sleeping.
I'm snoring?
Snoring.
You were going to say it.
I was going to say it.
Just say it. I'm not snoring.
You've been.
He lies. I do not snore.
I'm not lying. You snore, but I don't knock you on it because that's how I know you're in your like
a hardcore
sleep.
Kind of snore.
Not a Three Stooges kind of snore.
Okay.
One of those. But it's a good snore, and I don't mind it because I'm still up watching TV, and I don't mind it. And then all of a sudden I turn the TV off, and I don't even hear you because I'm out cold because I'm baked, and that's why I smoke so I can go to sleep more.
So you don't have to hear me snore.
I don't hear you snore. So it's great.
That's why you smoke.
That's why I smoke.
Sorry.
So, but so as we're talking about Mrs. WeedMan, and if you have lung issues and you can't smoke, there's the edible way or the tincture way. Take it under your tongue. There's what they do in Alabama. They shove shit up their ass, and
we're going back to that.
No, I just popped in my head. So, but there's different ways to medicate, is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So, and Mrs. WeedMan knows at certain times of the year, there's also times of the year where because she has allergies and pollen at certain times of the year gets her going, so she doesn't like to smoke then either. She'll rather eat an edible because it'll hit her differently. Or there's now drinks that you can take.
I like the drinks.
Yeah, there's different types of seltzers out there that are infusing, sodas and stuff like that. So because if you can't smoke, there's other ways to take your cannabis and to help you and medicate. So, but hopefully you guys got what I was talking about with the Congress. I think it's great that they're trying to get people's records expunged to try to get their life back. It's good. We talk about in this country reform, and we don't do it. And I'm going to be honest. Everything I've always read and watched, and we were watching that prison show, and they don't reform like they should to get people back out into society to have a life. It might not be normal for a while, but they have to have a life. We have to help people as human beings. Everyone makes fucking mistakes, and everybody does something wrong. People are not perfect, and you've heard me say I'm the least perfect person in the world. So, but I've come far, far, far from where I was when I was in my 20s and in my teens and in my 30s. You learn and grow every day, and we as humanity have to help people. We have to put our arm around people. We have to say, hey, we're here to help you. Listen, you went to prison for something, okay? Whether it was selling cannabis, whether it was robbing because you were hungry, okay? There's reasons why people do the things they do. And we as humanity need to help each other, okay? No one's perfect out there. So we need to give everyone a second chance. And sometimes you might need to give people a third chance. Don't close the book on somebody, ever. So something really good about cannabis, though, the rise in substance abuse and emissions have gone down, right, Mrs. Weedman?
Well, it's not. It's a little bit more.
A little more?
Involved than
Take
that.
it to us then.
You want to hear about
I
it?
want to hear about it.
So let's have a little flashback for a minute. I don't personally remember DARE being in my schools when I was growing up, but DARE was the drug abuse prevention education, right? So what did DARE stand for? Drug abuse resistance education. And so the program started around
Too big of words for kids, high school kids to remember.
It started around 1983, and it was beginning to be implemented in schools throughout the United States. And then eventually they got to a K through 12 program. I kind of remember something like that in high school. I don't remember it in grade school. I was in grade school in the 80s, but I don't remember it. Anyway, we all know, what did DARE teach? Gateway drugs, don't smoke, don't do weed.
Just say no.
Just say no.
Just say no.
Because the weed's going to make you, go shoot heroin tomorrow. Like that's how it worked, And so, but they didn't really include alcohol in that. They just said don't drink.
Well, it was Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Right. Yeah. Well, anyway, there's some studies going on about the adult use cannabis legalization not being associated with any rise in substance abuse treatment admissions. So it's not that there's not more admissions, but what it is they can't correlate the level of admissions to cannabis use.
Gotcha.
So the enactment of statewide laws in Colorado and Washington legalizing retail sales of cannabis for adults is not associated with any increase in the number of teens or young adults seeking drug abuse treatment for the use of opioids, cocaine, or methamphetamine, according to data published in the Journal of Substance Abuse Treatment. Researchers from Temple University in Philadelphia and the University of Tennessee in Knoxville compared pre- and post-legalization trajectories of substance abuse treatment admission rates in Colorado and Washington to a set of other U.S. states that did not legalize recreational cannabis use. Specifically, investigators assessed treatment admissions for opioids, cocaine, and methamphetamine among those ages 12 to 24. Authors didn't identify any uptick in drug treatment admissions in Colorado or Washington post-legalization, nor did the treatment trajectories in those states significantly differ from the trajectories in other states that didn't liberalize their cannabis laws. They reported, to the best of our knowledge, this is the first study to investigate whether recreational cannabis legalization in the U.S. led to an increase in substance use disorder treatment admissions for illicit drugs other than cannabis. We found that the legalization of recreational cannabis use in Colorado and Washington did not result in an increase in substance use disorder treatment admissions for cocaine, opioid, methamphetamines among adolescents or emerging adults. Commenting on the study's finding, NORML's deputy director, Paul Armentano, said, "This data further undermines long-standing claims that cannabis acts as any sort of gateway to the abuse of other controlled substances." Da-da-da.
Nice.
An allegation that has historically largely guided prohibition-based cannabis policies in the United States, despite a lack of hard evidence. So there never really were facts and data to say that cannabis was the gateway drug. And this really helps pinpoint that, right?
That's actually really good.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the more they do that and the longer they track it, it'll be interesting to see.
We've talked about this in prior episodes, and you and I have had personal conversations about this because we know people that have problems. And hearing someone one time said to me, well, I used cannabis and that led me to heroin. And I was like, no, that's not how it works.
Right.
That's what I've been smoking cannabis since I was 13 years old. I've never once wanted to try heroin.
Right.
I've never once wanted to try cocaine.
Right.
I've never once wanted to try crack. Just, what's
Just
the other
cannabis.
one? Crystal meth.
Phew.
I never wanted to try
Right.
it. Those never even crossed my mind. And we've watched so many shows with the interventions and all of those shows. I mean, we've watched a lot, and like I said, we've experienced people in our lives. Everybody who I know that used heroin or used cocaine,
Just that had an addiction problem.
but also didn't like weed.
Right. because it didn't give them
guys that I know. I mean, I was in the bar industry for how many years,
Mm-hmm.
and guys that like cocaine never want to even touch cannabis. Maybe 5% of them did because they smoked it in high school and they liked to help them go to sleep at night. You know, when they were all
Yeah, if
coked
they're
out.
on coke.
So to me, I don't know. I know there's been a lot, and that's perfect what you just read.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it's just weird.
It's kind of like the whole thing with alcohol too. Like there's certain drugs that they say, like opioids. Like your doctor puts you on a heavy opioid based, or is it opioid based? It's opioid. They put you on a heavy duty pain medication, right? And they say within 5 days of regular usage of that pain medication, that's an opioid, your body is addicted to it. The substance creates the addiction. So then you're constantly seeking more, and that's why people just can't get away from the opioids, and then it becomes too hard to get, and then it becomes heroin, right? And here we are with the heroin epidemic. And we've never seen times like this with heroin. But like alcohol, like when you go back to alcohol too, more importantly, like alcohol is addictive. It's an addictive substance. But I think that there's a component of genetics involved. And I think there's research that states that too, that just because you use alcohol, you're not, although it's an addictive substance, just because you use it, you don't become addicted. There is like a genetic addiction trait within you that creates that, or circumstance a lot of time leads to addiction, right?
Right.
You know,
well, the
life
whole thing with why opioids are
I
so
don't know, just weed doesn't fall into that.
well with opioids, why people get addicted to opioids is because they get hurt and injury.
Right, and it takes the pain away.
Right, but they take it for so long, and then the prescription runs out.
Right.
And what leads to the next one is heroin, because it's opioids like Oxycontin is basically derivative from heroin. They're both one and the same in some ways.
Right.
So
that's just natural progression of the drug use. Right. So anyway, it's
sorry,
just
I just thought it was a
yeah.
good point to talk on that one. You know,
but you don't hear about that happening with cannabis.
No, that's what I'm
You just
saying.
don't.
I could probably go like
don't.
a month or 2 months or 3 months, or I went 5 years without smoking cannabis, just because I took a break from everything.
I could see like maybe the ritual of cannabis, like if you had like an addictive personality, like the obsessiveness of it, you know, like all the accessories and the process, like, you know, I smoke at 8 p.m. every night, and kind of that addictive nature of like doing something the right way and all your ducks in a row.
Right.
But I don't think so. I think like the behavior of smoking, just like I feel like that too for like cigarette smokers. Like for me, when I smoked, it was like a habitual thing. It was just more like something to fidget with and something to keep my hands busy, and it was something social. So I liked it because it meant like if someone else is smoking, you can talk for 10 minutes. So I liked those aspects. I really didn't care about the nicotine.
No.
So it was easy for me to quit when I quit. But then there's smokers who are just like hardcore stuck to the nicotine.
The nicotine, yeah.
Anyway, so I think that weed could have like that like behavioral type addiction,
right?
Maybe.
True,
But
I agree.
Not like a psychological, like negative life affecting.
When I
addiction.
stopped everything for 5 years, just because I was training and it was just, I enjoyed smoking weed. Did I miss it? Yeah, but I never said I had to have it every day. You know,
Right.
So that's where I think this is great. Go weed, go weed.
Well, so separate data was released last year by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control that similarly reported that the number of adolescents admitted to drug treatment programs for cannabis-related issues has fallen precipitously. Ooh, that's a rough word. In states
It's okay to butcher words on the show. I do all the time.
Precipitously. In states that have legalized and regulated its adult use. So they're seeing a drop-off probably because the stigma and the recognition of it not being such a bad thing is falling off. So you don't send your kid to rehab because he smoked a joint anymore. Like you just talk as a
I
family.
remember a friend of mine, his parents, when he found out he smoked weed, like it was like I think it was like a month or
Did
two.
he get sent away for a month.
They put him away. They put him.
Yeah.
They sent him to a drug. I was so.
Yeah,
I was like,
but I mean,
dude,
that was the times.
I know. I was like, you only smoked weed.
Right.
It wasn't like you were doing lines of coke in the boys' bathroom or something like that.
Yeah, that would be a big difference, right? Jeez. Well, data published in 2019 in the journal JAMA Pediatrics also reported that the enactment of laws regulating the use of cannabis by adults is associated with declines in self-reported cannabis use by young people. So if you wanted to hear more or read more about this, the full text of the study is in the Journal of Substance Abuse Treatment. And additional information is provided in the normal fact sheet called Marijuana Regulation and Teen Use Rates. And I just thought you mentioned normal earlier. I think we've mentioned it on the show before, but for those of you that don't know, and you might be wondering what normal is,
I'm not normal, that's for sure.
it's an acronym. I don't know. Maybe it's not an acronym. Anyway, it's normal without the A. So NORML. It is an acronym.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, NORML is a nonprofit public interest lobby that for more than 40 years has provided a voice for Americans who oppose marijuana prohibition. And they do refer to cannabis still in their declaration here as marijuana. So they're a voice for Americans who oppose marijuana prohibition. They represent the interests of tens of millions of Americans who smoke marijuana responsibly and believe the recreational and medicinal use of marijuana should no longer be a crime. NORML supports the removal of all criminal penalties for the private possession and responsible use of marijuana by adults, including the cultivation for personal use and the casual, nonprofit transfers of small amounts. This model, similar to that recommended to Congress by President Nixon's esteemed Schaefer Commission in 1972, is called decriminalization. NORML additionally supports the development of a legally controlled market for marijuana, where consumers could purchase it from a safe, legal, and regulated source. This model is referred to as legalization.
Yay.
NORML believes that marijuana smoking is not for kids and should only be used responsibly by adults. As with alcohol consumption, it must never be an excuse for misconduct or other bad behavior. Driving or operating heavy equipment while impaired from marijuana should be discouraged and legally prohibited. NORML strongly supports the rights of patients to use marijuana as a medicine when their physician recommends it to relieve pain and suffering. NORML advocates for the legal use of marijuana, medicinal marijuana, since 1972. Lastly, NORML supports the rights of farmers to commercially cultivate the non-psychoactive strain of cannabis known as hemp for industrial purposes, such as food and fiber production. So, pretty cool organization, really, really great, resourceful website.
Yeah, and we've talked about NORML on the show, and the acronym stands for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws.
That's it.
Yeah, they were formed in 1971. We follow them. They're great. They need donations to help out because they're what are they?
Nonprofit.
Nonprofit. So support them. They've been fighting since 1971. They fight for legalization. They fight for criminal reform of it, and they fight for farmers to be able to grow it themselves. So they do a phenomenal job.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Good stuff, Mrs. WeedMan.
Good reading
Wow. Wait,
too.
hold on. I gotta say
What?
something. Did the cannabis help you focus?
It did.
Wow.
I feel like I didn't stumble too much.
Stumble, mumble, rumble.
You know, we
did
do
not.
this show. We don't record and there's probably 3/4 of our episodes that aren't even edited.
None of them are.
Yeah, and we might blurp out.
The only thing that's edited is we put the music on.
Yeah.
And if you screw up and call me by my first
Your
name,
first name,
and that's
right.
the only
That's the
time.
big ones.
That's the only time we've ever edited this show. Is when Mrs. WeedMan called me by my given name from my mother and my father.
Yeah.
So that is the only time it's, and Shoddy, our producer, does a great job.
Yeah.
So, but we don't edit the show. It's
We just
who
let
we
it
are.
roll.
It is how it is. So
We're normal.
we are very. No, I'm not. Jersey, on February 22nd, the governor Phil Murphy signs weed into law. Finally, the place I was born is legal. I need to go back and go smoke a joint.
Did your parents just drive over the bridge and have you and drive back over the bridge?
Basically, for a couple of years.
Oh, you lived there in
For
Jersey
a couple of years.
couple
Yeah, my dad worked over there. So, which is great. But what they need to do also now is they were arresting 6,000 people a week or a month, all the way up until the law. So now the Jersey Attorney General orders cannabis cases to be dropped following the legalization bill signing. Go, Attorney General. They were just mopping people up. I was reading a bunch of stuff about it and watching some news, and they were showing they were just 6,000 for. It was signed. It was passed, but it didn't get signed until this month. So they were just locking people up like crazy. So Jersey and that Attorney General, get that shit signed. Be proud of you. Place I was born. Virginia is the first southern state to vote to legalize recreational cannabis and to help fight racial injustices. Here's the crazy thing about it. They're not going to be able to start selling it, from what it says and what I've read, till 2024. That's like 3 years away. But what should be taking process is at least it should be fully decriminalized. So they stood poised to become the southern state to legalize cannabis after lawmakers approved the bill and aimed to part ending disparate treatment faced by racial injustice by the system. So it's really good. You know, just hopefully like now it's rec with Jersey now too. So you got 15 and 16. Virginia's 16. So that's good stuff, Virginia. Just get it going a little quicker. At least let people start growing it themselves. We'll have it popped up in 90 days. 90 days. We don't have to wait. Home grow, baby. North Dakota House approves cannabis legalization bill. So what's crazy is the North is going to get it done faster than the South, who it was voted by the people that they wanted medical and recreational. In South Dakota, the governor is fighting it with some other people. But look at this. North Dakota saying, fuck you, we'll just take your people coming over to see us, and we'll legalize it. Shame on you, South Dakota, but go North Dakota. Proud of you. Florida ranks third in the country in 2020 for cannabis sales.
Whoa.
22 million people.
How many dispensaries do they have down
Well,
do we know?
it's over. I'll find out, but
a
I
big
know
state.
I know it's over. It's over a couple. It's over 100. I know that for sure. I think it's something like 300.
Okay.
They did 1.3 billion in sales in 2020. It ranks now third underneath Colorado and California, and home to 331 dispensaries spread across the state. Florida added 170,000 patients in 2020, bringing the total registered patients to nearly 500,000, 485,690 tree.
Cool.
The state also added roughly 15,000 cannabis jobs in 2020.
How many? 15,000?
15,000. Well, I'm going to talk about cannabis.
In 2020.
In 2020 alone,
That's
right.
awesome.
The report suggests Florida cannabis recipients could easily double in the state. Adopted adult use cannabis, estimating the potential to be up 2.1 billion in sales, 800,000 per month in taxes, up to 80,000 local jobs by 2025. That's if they just make it. There's 22 million people in Florida, and it's just medical right now with not even a half a million patients, and they did 1.3 billion. Florida, I love
Florida.
you. I love you, Florida. Love it. So, and you guys are just.
What's the average age of a Floridian?
I have no idea.
I gotta find out.
So Florida could reasonably double in current total of cannabis jobs in 2021. By 2024, and if they legalize it for adults, and this is coming from a bunch of economics guys, and Leafly has talked about this, and crazy. I mean, you people in Florida, man. You bunch of burners down there, stoners and potheads. I love you. It's amazing. You guys are not even recreational, and you're number 3. 800,000 you're going to be generating in stocks, possibly. Oh, my God. Amazing. and a very flourishing state right now. It's going to help people that are hurting down there because a lot of that money is going to go to social justice reform, and it's going to go to helping homeless, so which is great. And then another one, like I talked about, the surge in Florida with jobs and the growth it's gonna do. I mean, people are gonna have jobs. It's gonna be a great flourishing market. Michigan.
Wait, Florida's average age is 42.2.
42 years.
Yeah. So
I wanted 20 years ago. It was probably like 65 and older.
Yeah,
It was probably was the more age. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's warm. It's
19% of Florida residents are over 65.
Wow. So
That's a big percentage.
That's a big
Yeah.
difference, yeah. Well, you got to think all those baby boomers that moved down there, that now they're in their 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s.
Their kids have moved down.
Their kids are now in their 40s or 50s. So there's your age. That whole generation gap. So Michigan cannabis sales neared $1 billion in 2020. So we've talked about Michigan in a couple episodes, and they were pissed off because they thought that sales were going to hurt, or big cannabis companies thought because people get to home grow in states that it was going to hurt the industry and they weren't going to make enough money. You can grow 12 plants as a caregiver, or you can just grow 12 plants the moment you get a Michigan license, and they still did $1.2 billion
In sales.
I mean, almost $1 billion in sales
Over the whole year.
over the whole year. And that's medical and recreational. And you can grow. Well, we know a grower. I mean,
Right.
but I know a lot of people that grow in Michigan. So, and it's going to poised to do over $1 billion in 2021, Michigan. So, all you corporations out there that are scared that you're not going to make enough money, almost $1 billion is a lot of money. Let people grow if they want to grow. And you're still going to make money.
Well, I mean, think about it.
How much more money do you want to make?
Anybody can grow a tomato. Look,
Yeah.
every store has tomatoes. Like
But
every
people still
store
grow. We
right,
grew.
right. It's not affecting the tomato industry.
I still go to the grocery store and get tomatoes because you don't always have a consistent supply.
The amount of home growers is like so few. Yeah.
100%. And this is on Normal's website. Just read it. Legal cannabis industry employs 321,000 full-time workers. It's 32%. Jobs in the state licensed cannabis industry rose 32% during the past 12 months. And the industry now, like I said, employs 321,000 full-time workers, according to the data compiled. And according to 2021 report, that regulated cannabis industry added approximately 78,000 new jobs over the past 12 months. That's crazy. So the more states legalize rec, the more they grow. That's more jobs. It reminds me of the craft beer industry when it really got started, which you're going to be talking about here in a little bit.
I am.
But it reminds me a lot because the craft beer industry employed a lot of people until COVID happened. And a lot of shit went to shit. But the cannabis industry, because we got deemed essential workers, just like the beer industry and alcohol industry and all that stuff. But cannabis is more medicinal. Articles we've talked about, probably people reading that it's helping people during this turmoil. People don't get depressed when they're on cannabis. You know, they get more relaxed. They get their mind right. So why the cannabis industry in all the states that are fully rec or medical sales have gone up every month, and because people are going towards cannabis. You know, cannabis doesn't. No one's ever died from cannabis. Cannabis doesn't put on weight.
Unless you eat a bunch.
I don't get the munchies like some people though, but sometimes I think you could just, there's strains out there that say that it doesn't give you the munchies. So, well, let's talk about munchies because edibles are outperforming the cannabis industry in growth in 2020. A lot of people, like we talk about, rather do an edible than smoke. And we've talked about edibles on the show hundreds of times and how much we like them. We make them and we buy them. Love me some anything that's got some cannabis in it, So, and here's the thing about it. The need for new product, it's kind of reminded me once again of the craft beer industry where everyone wants the shiny new toy. And I like a shiny new toy every once in a while, but I'm the kind of person when I find something I like, I just stick to it because I know consistency. I mean, I know everyone wants to try a new product but a lot of people wind up going back to the product they like. So the shiny new toy, the new products, people are trying to bring out new stuff all the time. Like we make edibles at home and we always move around in what you make, so which is good. But who's buying the most edibles right now? New consumers are flocking to edibles, and they're looking for that low dose, because they're just getting into cannabis, which is kind of cool. That 5 milligram, 10 milligram dose. I mean, we know people that could take 300. I mean, I talked to somebody that said they take like 300 milligrams. I'm like, 300 milligrams? I'm
That's
good
nuts.
with 10 on a dosage basis, but 10 here, 10 there. 300 all at once?
No way.
Oh, my goodness. I was like, damn.
They always, I hear people say that they, if they feel like they need too much to get the feeling of being high, they will, stop smoking or stop consuming cannabis for 2 or 3 weeks. And then when they come back to it, it's like their body has to relearn.
Right.
But do they really in that short amount of time? Like if you stopped for 2 weeks, would it take you back down to being 5 milligrams?
I don't think
does
2
the
weeks.
Job?
I know somebody that went 90 days.
Yeah.
And the first time they smoked a joint again, they thought they were they could have done what they used to do. And he said he was fucking
awful.
baked. Not awful, but he was just like, wow, I can't believe but that was 90 days. When I stopped for 5 years and I stopped and I started again, remember the first time you were by me when I smoked and I got the shakes because I hadn't smoked in 5 years. I was like, wow, holy fuck. I mean, we really upped its game in 5 years. I mean, you were making fun of me, like, why are you shaking? I'm like, I'm got the chills because my blood pressure dropped. I wasn't used to smoking, and you were just busting my chops the whole time, thinking I was freaking out. So the future of edibles, more wide range of products. More people are moving away from inhalables to move more towards edibles, so which is kind of cool. And then the bottom line is the year of 2020 was the first to see cannabis edibles sector grow faster than the cannabis flower section. That's crazy. The pandemic has changed the way people think about health, which has a considerable impact on the cannabis industry. Cannabis companies have to adapt to the new rules of the game and provide customers with the type of products they're willing to pay for. The future of cannabis products was never more exciting than it is today, and I agree. I mean, the new shit that we've been trying, the stuff we get to grow, the seeds we get to get from phenos. We find some great genetic guys out there. You know, it's exciting. I mean, I've been enjoying growing so much, but also like going to the dispensary still and find out some new products. Or I follow a lot of different growers across the world. I look at what they're growing. I get excited about them growing their own stuff. I get really excited about seeing people making their own edibles. Companies I follow. I think it's great. It's a lot of fun. Like Jason from Illinois News Joint, he's like selling these little dab rigs now that he invented. I thought that was pretty dope. So the invention, just not only just what people are doing with edibles, but doing with the whole cannabis industry is friggin' awesome. So in some international news, Morocco set to legalize medical and industrial cannabis production. I think they're saying like this week, so that's crazy. And because it got finally voted and reclassified by the World Health Organization, and they're basically they voted, and they're tired of losing out to sales of cannabis in Europe and stuff like that, because they do supply to Germany, and they're losing out to other European countries and Canada right now, because right now Germany is the biggest importer of cannabis. So, and Morocco was their biggest one, and unfortunately they're losing out. But what Morocco is also doing here is still not going to let it go recreational. It's going to be more for the sales for other countries, and that's what Morocco is doing. Good for them. Hopefully they make some money, help their country out. We want to go to Morocco. We've talked about going to Morocco, many a times. So, but they're pissed off too because they're missing out on record sales. Can medical cannabis save the Barbados economy? I was reading some stuff. They're saying that Barbados is going to go on the NASDAQ or they're going to do their own cannabis stock exchange and start selling shares and stuff like that. On top of it's going to start growing because COVID-19 crushed their economy because of tourism. So they're going to make a big play with medical cannabis. They're going to have strategic locations for U.S., Canada, and Europe. The increase for demand for medical cannabis in these countries. Demand will begin driving increasing requirements for the treatment of various conditions. With the right partners, Barbados can tap into the market share. They want to be the leader in the Caribbean, and there's investment opportunities like I talked about. So check it out, Barbados. Go for it, baby. I want to go visit your country. India. The love-hate relationship with cannabis. And we've talked about India was part of the Silk Road with China. They're still one of the only countries that you can get hemp clothing from, right, that you were telling me about?
Yes.
That they import a lot of their hemp, but they are the leading producer of hemp clothing.
They export a lot.
Export a lot. But they import a lot of hemp. They do the fibering, and then they export everything they make from it, from what I read. And they also do their own hemp, too. So, but here's the other thing about cannabis with India. We've talked about Bang. Remember, I was calling it Bahang. It's Bang, and it's the milkshake they make with milk and copper bowls and cannabis, and then you only need like a little dab will do you, and you're like whacked. But these are legal in India, and 31 million people in India use cannabis products according to the magnitude of substance use in the India survey in 2019. India has a funny relationship with cannabis. Smoking a joint comes with a sketchy reputation. Yet Bang follows through the streets during the biggest celebration in the country. While cannabis flower is illegal, Bang is sold all over the country at government-authorized shops, usually littered with dazed customers giving the special cookies a try. Yeah, but like I said, it's this milk made in. Yeah, I used to sell beer, and I know a lot of stores that I got to become friends with. These guys were telling me about this, and it was pretty dope. Like, if you ever go over there, you need to try it. You'll love it. So, but with all this going on, it's still very looked at in a negative way, even though it's been legal in India forever, the Bang shops. So, you just got to be careful smoking flower, but go try the Bang. But it's like I said, a love-hate relationship with it. They should just start growing it there and just teach people the right way. I mean, it's been part of the culture for 10,000 years. Police find a secret grow op with more than 1,000 plants hidden in an industrial unit. My guys over in England over there, cannabis grow op with more than 1,000 plants has been discovered by police in England following a tip from the community. Snitches end up in ditches, is what I always say.
Whoa.
Reports the Birmingham Mail. The haul was uncovered in an industrial unit of Oakdale Trading Estate in Kingswood. Officers found the grow spread across several rooms in a raid conducted earlier during that week. They also recovered weapons from the scene, including an axe and a snapped-off broom handle with nails. So no guns, just an axe that we're probably chopping wood maybe with.
Yeah, right.
But what do you? I mean, okay, and you got a stick with some nails coming out of it. I see the pictures of it.
That's
it's a dull axe, and it's a stick with had 6 nails on it. But that's the only weapons they found.
Isn't that like a zombie device?
Yes. So 2 men aged 29 and 36 were found inside the unit. They remain in police custody, and investigation continues. And so they didn't have guns, though.
Right.
And I mean, I get it's the grow op that I'm looking at the pictures of is amazing. It looks like a professional grow operation. I mean, it was legit in a warehouse. It had the lighting. It was clean. It was. I mean, they had full grown plants. Yes, it was illegal, but this is what you get. I mean, England needs to start pass it. The people in England. So I tried some. When I went to London. I tried some weed. It was pretty good. It wasn't the greatest I've ever smoked, but this was 2015. I bet you it's gone 1,000-fold now. Yeah, the pictures I see, yes. It's from what I'm seeing, yes. But this grow operation is pretty legit. And just pass it and let people get licenses and be able to grow over there, you know? And this wouldn't happen. But once again, they didn't have like 30 Uzis and machine guns and shit waiting for the law to come in. They had a pickaxe and a friggin' nail on a stick. They weren't trying to kill anybody. They were just growing some weed. That's just my opinion. Take it or leave it. Changing cannabis laws in the Middle East, Lebanon, and Israel. Historical cannabis use in the Middle East. Earlier in the year, archaeologists published the findings that they found in the Jewish temple at Tel Arad. They found a temple that had what seemed to be some burning cannabis in a pot during burial in this shrine. Lebanese hashish has long been renowned as the country that produces the high-quality hashish, notable in the fertile and beautiful but improvised Bekaa Valley, which is around 17 miles long. It was been farmed there for many centuries, illegally since the 1920s when it was outlawed, particularly in the late 1970s. Gold, brown Lebanese, and real Lebanese hashish were widely distributed in Europe. The term gold and red for Lebanese hash referred to the color, but also to the 2 growing seasons. In Britain, the price of an ounce of Lebanese hash rose from $13 or 10 pounds in 1969 to now today, which is like 32 pounds from what I'm reading. Okay. And that goes from $3 billion industry, though, from the 1975 to 1990. According to the United Lebanese Nations, Lebanon is the world's 3rd largest producer of hashish after Morocco and Afghanistan. Between 20,000 and 30,000 hectoliters of land are currently used for growing cannabis. A tenth of the hectare produces between 1,000 and 2,000 kilograms of cannabis, which can be turned into 4 to 8 grams of hashish. In March 2020, Lebanese police seized 25 tons of hashish bound for Africa. That's a lot of tons.
That's a lot.
Yes. So Lebanon legalizes medical industrial cannabis. In 2018, the government of Lebanon commissioned as an inquiry of global management consultant company McKinsey into a feasible and producing high-quality medicinal products made from cannabis. This was one of 150 proposals by the McKinsey. It reported that $1 billion a year could be generated from cannabis. $1 billion a year. Cannabis use in Israel, unlike in Orthodox Islam, Orthodox Jews are traditionally not prohibited by religious laws to use alcohol or other intoxicants. In Israel, the largest Jewish immigrant community came from North Morocco between 1948 and 1951, where for many centuries they previously had lived a culture where using cannabis was a commonplace. Medical cannabis and decriminalization in Israel since the 1960s, where Ralph McChollum, I've talked about him before on the show, he's the godfather of Delta-9. He's the discovery of THC. It was the forefront of global scientific studies for cannabis. So Israel has been on top of the studies. Israel legalizes recreational cannabis. Israel has the highest percentage per capita of cannabis users in the world. In 2017, 27% of the population, the age of 18 to 65, it's a very wide range, reported cannabis within the last year use. So, and now there is a plan to fully legalize it, broadly following the arrangements implemented by Canada. Oh, they're following Canada's rules. Perfect. Israeli cannabis shops. Under the new Israel law, cannabis would be available to purchase in shops by adults over the age of 21. Israel cannabis amnesty. There was an announcement in an Israel parliament that these reforms do justice to more than 1 million lawful citizens. President Benjamin Netanyahu tweeted on February 2020 that he wishes to expunge the criminal records. I mean, this is great stuff. Both countries. So they're moving forward. But just reading what Israel's doing is they're following what Canada did. They're going to legalize it fully, grow it. They've been studying it since the 1960s, and they're going to expunge records and help people get back into being a human again. That's fucking great. Both countries. I'm proud of you both. There's a new promising future in a new cannabinoid. We've talked about Delta 8, and this one now is called Delta 10. A new cannabinoid. And you heard it right. Delta 10 is one of the hundreds of cannabinoids found in cannabis, but unlike some of the bigger names like CBD, Delta 9, THC, CBG, CBN, and Delta 8, THC, Delta 10 is not a naturally occurring plant compound, although it does start off that way. The molecular sibling does have many commonalities to Delta 9 and Delta 8, but there's some key differences as well. Let's explore what I'm finding out and reading in these articles, what Delta 10 THC is so far, and why it's important to you and as a consumer and the industry. As with many of the nation's cannabis trends, Delta 10 has started in California too. However, at the time it was purely accidental. A company called Fusion Farms of El Donto, California, bought some outdoor flower to a manufacturer. As many already know, California is subjected to some of the most very large wildfires. And unbeknownst to the Fusion Farms, the biomass they purchased was concentrated with fire retardant. I don't know what fire retardant is. Sorry. If anybody can tell me, I'd be happy to know.
Make something like less vulnerable to burning.
Did not know that. Thank you, Mrs. Weedman. Since they were unaware of the contamination, they continued with the extraction of plant, but after distillation process, unusual crystals began to form. These crystals had completely different structure than previously observed cannabinoid crystals. After conducting some laboratory tests, it was determined that these crystals were very similar to CBC, but still not an exact match. They continued testing the structure against all the known cannabinoids, and no match was found. This went on for several months. Eventually, they discovered that it was another variation of tetrahydrocannabinol formed because of the plant exposure to those fire retardants, Delta 10 THC. So basically, D10 is an artificial cannabinoid formed by converting D9 or other cannabinoids using from some type of catalyst. In this case, it was a fire retardant, but companies are looking at various greenery methods to create Delta 10, like a certain food-grade additive. In chemistry, Delta refers to the double bond of compound molecular structure. Delta compounds have more electrons and will interact with the body in a different way than a single-bond cannabinoid. The difference between Delta THC analogs comes down to where the double bond is located on their chain of carbon atoms. Delta 8 has the bond on the 8 carbon chain, Delta 9 on the 9th chain, and Delta 10 THC has the double bond on the 10th carbon chain.
Did you follow that?
Yes.
Okay.
It seems like I read it pretty good for being baked.
Did. You were kind of starting to sing.
I was rhyming.
Yeah.
It was the only way I could
like
do
little,
it. It was the only way I could do it. I had to sing this part. So it seems like a small difference, but the form of a chemical standpoint is substantial. So how does Delta 10 THC affect the body? Honestly, it's hard to say because the cannabinoid is so new, there is really no concrete information on how it affects the body and what medical benefits it could provide. I think it's safe to assume that the effects will be similar to other tetrahydrocannabinols, and it will be likely interacted with the body's CB1 and CB2 receptors, which we've talked about in prior shows. However, that's just educated speculation at the point. All that we can say for sure is Delta 10 is less psychoactive than Delta 9 and even less psychoactive than Delta 8. Though, not by much for the latter, it's likely that you will need higher concentrations of Delta 10 to achieve the same results you would get from the other THCs. Once the laws they're saying in this article open up, they'll be able to do more testing and more studying. So let's go Delta 10. Let's go Delta 10. So, Craft beer.
Yep.
We've drinked it.
We've drinked it.
We've drinked it. A lot of it.
Yes.
You weren't a very fan of beer, though.
I did not like beer for most of my life.
And,
Yeah.
but
I learned to like it
Right.
through. I learned to like beer through having craft beer. And now I'll like do an old school, like a. I've not had Bud Light. I've had Coors Light.
yes,
MG, not MGD.
we
do
are High Life
High
drinkers.
Life.
We love the High Life.
And what other domestic beer?
I think you've tried Pabst,
Yeah.
Corona, Tecate.
I like Corona, Tecate.
Yeah, you like imports.
Yeah.
But you also like craft
Yeah.
beer.
But yes, so craft beer got me into beer. Yeah.
But we've learned a lot about craft beer in over a 10-year period of time.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see the craft beer industry? Is it like the cannabis industry?
Yeah. So we do. We've got some pretty strong ties to the craft beer industry and some connections there. And we have paralleled a lot of things about cannabis with craft beer over the years. We're like, wow, they're just so similar. Like even at the most simple element of hops. Hops is a derivative of the cannabis plant, right?
Yes,
So, right.
They both share the same terpene called humulin.
Mm-hmm. And so just at that base level, they have similarities, but then even just the whole dynamic of a craft item or a craft beer is kind of falling and intertwining with the cannabis industry. So we have seen the popularity of craft beer rise across the nation, and according to IBIS World, craft beer industry revenue has increased at an annualized rate of 4.4% to $7.6 billion between the years of 2015 and 20, including estimated growth of 2.1% in 2020 alone. There always seems to be a unique appeal to any product that we deem to be craft. As many of us have predicted, we're starting to see this trend become more evident in the cannabis space. Tag Remmel, the co-founder and lead grower of Asheville Craft Cannabis, was asked to dig deeper into the craft cannabis scene and explain. Tag has over 2 decades of experience in large-scale cannabis research and cultivation, which gives him a unique vantage point into the essence of craft cannabis, sustainable architecture, and regenerative agriculture. Here's what Tag Remmel had to say about craft cannabis being the next potential craze in cannabis, how it relates to craft beer, the difference between craft and average flower, and the future of craft cannabis. So, what exactly is craft cannabis? A critical component of craft cannabis is that it's consciously cultivated. Unlike quote-unquote supermarket cannabis, craft is not just consumed, it's experienced. Craft cannabis is handmade. Each step of the process is carried out by artisans rather than mass-produced. On the micro level of all of this, there needs to be a relationship between the cultivator and the plant. What's the difference between an average quality flower and something that a connoisseur would consider to be craft cannabis? Well, craft cannabis is adventurous, artistic, and pushes the envelope of new tastes and experiences. Craft cannabis flower is grown with more attention to detail. It goes through a longer, more gentle curing process, much like aged wine, and has much more trim. All of this extra attention to detail adds more complex and pronounced flavors and aromas. Last but certainly not least, where the flower is from, how it's made, and what values have also been playing a big role in setting it apart from average cannabis, making it craft cannabis, right? So how does it really compare to craft beer? Well, very directly, according to Reg. They both place a huge emphasis on handmade. They both promote craft values and sustainable methods. Just like craft beer, craft cannabis focuses on highlighting the story of how craft products are made with attention to detail. Just like with craft beer, craft cannabis means playing with new ingredients, focusing on sustainability, and uplifting the community at the same time. Experimenting adventurously with new ingredients is something that both craft beer and craft cannabis are known for, and ultimately, both rely heavily on the loyal customer experiences to develop new products. Parallel completely to to craft beer.
Gosh, the craft beer
It's all
industry.
about the stories.
Yeah, and you always had to have the shiny new toy.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't come out with something new, shiny, like the hazy IPA trend and this milkshake IPA and this double barrel bourbon chocolatey peanut buttery stout that was aged 5 years in barrels. If you didn't have that to go like to bring out a few times a year, people would kind of forget about you a little bit here and there, you know.
Yeah. So a lot of folks also enjoy complementing craft beer with specific foods. So does the same hold true for craft cannabis? Reg said, absolutely. Craft cannabis cultivars all complement taste depending on their genetics and how they are created. In the same way that food and wine have been paired forever, pairing food and cannabis is becoming a sought-after experience. Also, cannabis has a huge variety of tastes to explore. Not to mention it gives you the munchies. So perfect.
Wait, can I say something real quick? We cooked last Saturday with butter that we had left over from the edibles that you made.
It was so nice.
I caramelized onions in that butter and then added corn, cilantro, and roasted it all together with that can of butter. That was made with ghee and coconut oil together. And that was used to make the stuffed poblano peppers. We were fucking on cloud nine.
It was just a wonderful, very low level,
unreal.
Just such a nice high.
Oh
like
my!
That lasted consistently.
10 hours.
It wasn't like, oh,
No.
I'm high. Oh, I'm not. Oh, I'm high.
You and I looked at each other. I'm like, how are you feeling? You're like,
amazing.
Right. I was the whole we both slept. I woke up. I woke up still maybe a little like just like wow. I'm still like kind of feeling good, but that was
in the morning.
Yeah, well, I think because remember I told you I couldn't get out of bed. I was like the bed
you
felt
like you were just so
it felt like I was sucked into the bed, literally. Like I could like my body was just so comfortable, and I was like, I felt like I was like literally inside the bed. That's how well I slept, and that's why I woke up like still feeling like on cloud nine.
That's funny.
It was amazing. So I get it, like where they're saying craft food. I mean, craft beer dinners and pairing food, but pairing where you can add the cannabis. I mean, I know you can cook with beer. People do, and they use barbecue sauces and all that stuff. But this is like everything you can infuse food with that will not maybe.
You can go for a whole dinner. Like a restaurant could have like. You can add infusion to your whole meal. So if you do a 3-course meal, you'll get 5 milligrams in each portion. Or if it's a 5, like you pick.
What was that show we watched?
Yes. It was on Vice.
Yes, it was.
It was like a cannabis dinner party.
Yes, and that was great.
Yeah. And so
Bon Appetit.
Bon Appetit. Yeah,
yes,
that was amazing.
That show was great. So if, like it gets legalized and it fully gets federal, and cities allow it where you can add 5 milligrams per meal or 10 milligrams per meal, or the people can pick what they want. That'd be pretty dope,
wouldn't it?
Yes.
Like imagine like Maine lobster with a butter dredge that had cannabis in it. Oh my God, it would be like a heavenly dinner.
Guess what we're having for dinner?
And then
next week.
You just go up to your hotel room, hopefully, because you can't drive.
Yeah.
And you pass out.
But yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense.
So the next question asked of Reg was, how do you foresee the future of cannabis developing or craft cannabis developing as more states jump on the legalization train? Reg said, I believe that legalization will create more demand, which will spark new business. Large companies will buy out smaller locations, eventually creating the Walmart of weed. We say this all the time, right? These mega companies will flood the market with average products, much like chain stores today. Fortunately for craft cultivators, the influx of subpar products creates a demand for superior craft-made products, right? A large percentage of consumers seek out superior products that have been made with precision, care, and attention to detail, just like in our existing craft beer industry.
Well, that's what the craft beer industry always said versus the microbreweries, was that we're craft, we know about quality, we know the ingredients, we promote independence, we promote community, story, culture, and that's the same thing with the craft cannabis industry, I guess.
So that your consumers feel like they're part of something. It's not just a product on the shelf that everybody can buy. Right. It's pretty cool. So basically, he just said, Reg said, the future of craft is bright thanks to humanity's constant search for I can't even say that. For their constant search for individuality and something better.
There you go.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, we know both industries, and you know they're both great industries, and you'll have your big name brands that will be selling to all the major chains eventually.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where you'll have, and it'll be
mass produced.
It'll be mass produced. It'll be, let's say, affordable.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to get an eighth for $15, and if that's what people can afford and smoke, and it's good, it's still made ethically, I guess you could say, and not like that's gonna harm people. Fine, they'll have scientists that'll be able to put GMOs and do it right. No one's died from eating GMO corn that I know of. So, you know, it's gonna happen. Am I gonna smoke that? No, because I'm gonna grow my own. And I'll still go to high dispensaries and I could be able to choose. Oh, I know this grow.
Well, you'll have your craft girl.
Right.
Like I think that neighborhoods are gonna have their little craft store, their craft cannabis store, and it's a local family, just like a normal. Like think about your farmer's market in the summer and warmer months. Your farmer's market, there could be a stand there, and it's, you know, Joe and Mary who grow over, you know, in Wisconsin, if Wisconsin goes legal. Anyway, it'll become so localized and craft, and that'll be cool. So you can still get your convenient stuff at the convenience store at that point. You know, in the future, it's just going to be everywhere. There won't necessarily be dispensaries, right? It could just be in your convenience store.
Right.
You go into 7-Eleven and you get a blunt and a cup of coffee. It'll become that eventually.
Yeah.
But then you're going to have your craft store.
Right.
And that'll be cool.
100%. Well, great job.
Yeah, I think we kind of lost
No, we didn't. I thought we did good.
our way there.
I'm
for a
pretty
second.
big, but, you know. Today is February 28th, the last day of Black History Month. And we love our brothers and sisters out there. So, but March 1st starts first days of the Women's History Month. And we're going to start off right here, since it is February 28th. We're going into March 1st. And Mrs. WeedMan is going to talk about a female CBD executive.
Yes.
We'll start it off right. Women's History Month.
Whoop, whoop. Go girls. When our daughter was little and there were a lot of nieces in the family, we would always say, girls rule, boys drool.
Over girls.
Yeah. We were all for the guys. We loved them. But we just really empowered each other together as girls. And I look back at that. Like, I don't even think that we knew we were doing that at the time. It was just, we are a family of strong girls, and it just seemed natural to remind.
There's 5 of you. Yeah.
Yeah. It just seemed natural to remind the younger ones that, you know, don't let any boy tell you what you can and can't do. Who's he to say? Push him out of the way and just
I didn't
do
have
it,
sisters, but it was just me and my brother, and there was 8, 9, 10 girl cousins, so it was basically the same thing. And we got beat up and pushed around. And we were taught to
Yeah, because
respect.
you got some tough girls in your family
we
too.
were taught to
Yeah.
respect women. Like it didn't matter, you know. Or else I had a very strong mother too that would give you a whack in the head if you fucked up, you know. So I had strong aunts. I mean, I had a family of strong women,
Yeah.
strong.
Yeah.
I mean, just like kick your ass Italian women that don't take no shit. So I didn't have a choice
And my
to disrespect any woman ever. I got the shit kicked out of me if I did by
And
10
we had some
cousins.
strong women on my side. My mom's mom was she just hustled. She was in the fashion world, and she ran fashion shows and managed stores, clothing stores, and did all sorts of stuff.
Your
And
aunt was the first of
my
what?
aunt was the first female vice president of the First National Bank of Chicago. At the time, was like the bank in the city, and she was the vice president there, first female. And
My cousin
yeah.
just got her master's in science.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Strong woman.
Yep.
She's also a bodybuilder.
Yep.
Raises a daughter and a son, twins, and
Volunteers, does all sorts of
crazy.
things. Yeah.
Way to go, cuz.
So yeah, so strong women. That's what we're talking about. And you know, being strong doesn't mean making anyone else feel weak. But the goal is that we are all just equal. Like gender shouldn't determine if you could be more successful or less. So with that in mind, Sarah Labs was founded in 2018 by renowned entrepreneur Nancy Deutsch. It has become the trusted leader in health, wellness, and beauty sectors of innovative CBD products. Nancy was interviewed, and here's what she had to say. Sometime around 2007, I was sitting in the boardroom for a publicly traded company I ran. 10 men sat around a table with me. A potential investor was on the speakerphone. We were requesting $10 million in funding from him. "Honey," he said to me, "what if I didn't give you $10 million, but I gave you $100 million instead? How would you spend it?" It was a misogynistic and loaded question that I knew he would never ask my male colleagues. Without losing my cool, I remained silent for 20 seconds, relishing the uncomfortable silence. Then I said, "I'd go to Neiman Marcus, of course. What else would I do with the money?" His dismissiveness is something I've experienced time and time again as a woman executive making her way through the business world. My career has taken me to many illustrious places, but these days I'm the CEO and founder of wellness, skincare, and CBD company Sarah Labs. In addition to learning to brush off the opinions of men who just don't get it, there are some other tips and tricks I've picked up over the years that I think other women angling for business success can internalize for their success. Don't back down. One of the most important lessons I learned from my mentor, Earl Greenberg, a great leader in the consumer product goods and direct marketing industry. He pushed me when I met him sometime in the middle of my career and said, "You've got more guts and moxie than any businessman." He urged me not to listen to what other people had to say about me being a woman executive. He knew I would be threatening to some men, but told me not to allow men to make me feel bad. One day, Earl leveled with me and said something I'll never forget. "I'm going to give you a shot of optimism and adrenaline," he announced. "You need to use your instincts and your analytic skills. At some point, you will see it will not make a difference that you're a woman or a man in business, as long as you are producing the kind of revenue that you're capable of," he said. And he was right. To Earl's point, I found that I got a lot of respect for my accomplishments as I got older. When I was younger, I was just a tough businesswoman, the bitch word. He never called me that, and you would never call a man that, of course. You just praise him and say that he was tough. But it's interesting how businesswomen and executives are seen today versus 30 years ago. Back then, it was much harder for women to get into the so-called boys' club. No matter what happened in the business arena, women had to keep their heads above water, both morally and ethically, even though we were never going to be able to join the good old boys' club. There weren't many successful businesswomen.
It's not that good.
Yeah. There weren't many successful businesswomen, so we all gravitated towards each other without even realizing it. This boys' club mentality has changed over the years, thankfully, and things have opened up slightly. As I got more successful and generated more revenue for the companies I ran, I started noticing people how they treated me. This shouldn't come as a surprise, but I noticed that I got a lot more respect. In many ways, I was even able to assert myself with more and greater strength. But I think that men still have a misogynistic view of women in business, especially those in older generations like Gen X and Boomers. But things have changed for millennials and Gen Z. I think that women in general are treated with a lot more respect today. Still, I think being an executive is not an easy gig for women to have. I think it's intimidating for a lot of men who have yet to evolve. But it's up to women to change and create that change. A woman can help advance this paradigm shift to show that men are wrong. Women can do other things to level up in business, like identify that they're good at doing what nobody else can do. Once they've figured that out, it's time to then surround themselves with high-achieving people who can all do things that they can't. It's like the old advertising adage, you can't advertise to everyone because then you're advertising to no one. So it is with success. Don't try to be all things to all people all the time. If someone is everything to everyone, they're nothing to anybody. Knowing and acting on this dynamic takes confidence, but hiring to an executive's weakness is the best thing a leader can do. As for me, I look at myself as a coach. I'm good at team building, and I consider myself the best leader. I'm at the helm, but my entire roster is made up of A1 players who can do what I can't. We all have our roles to play, and I pick my team to get results. By extension, they make me look good. Being a successful businesswoman requires many unique qualities, But knowing how to build a great team and using it to get the results is perhaps something specific to women that can't be harnessed and used for success. Women have to compete against decades of a very specific boys' club to get ahead, particularly in the CBD, health, wellness, and beauty industries. Innate emotional intelligence and the ability to connect is something that comes more naturally to women, and it's something that we should capitalize on in the coming up in the business community. So, super cool.
Can I say
nice
one thing?
words of advice from her. Yes.
Pa-pow!
Pow,
She's
right?
just an ass kicker.
Boom. Yeah.
Ass kicker.
Yeah. So I think that's great. I love that whole concept of we can all do better by working together. Like, I can't do everything well, but I can do certain things really, really well. So you hire people for those jobs that you don't like, the piece of your pie that just is not your thing. Like for me, it's like the back end, like, admin type stuff. I like the physical, the negotiating. I like just the dynamic of working with people. But the background, like, oh, send a note to this person and that person, some of that gets kind of mundane. So you just, as a point of reference, that's the person that you hire. All right, I need an admin person that can sit at my desk and handle all these little jobs that to me are just so like burdening, right?
Well, not even just burdening. They're not your thing.
Right.
You know, you like getting out in the forefront, getting the view
Right.
work done. Someone who's just likes to do that, analytical data person.
Yeah, so then you have all these
that can
people fall into these
right,
categories.
100%. There's people out there that
You work as a
enjoy being the back end work,
Well,
and that's what
yeah.
they're exceptionally good at. There's some people like being
Right, you have an HR department, you have an accounting department,
Right.
you have a marketing department. There's a reason for that, because at the top of the company is a guy that has other jobs to do, and so these other like aspects of your day are super important too. So
Yeah.
you just hire professionals who are good at them.
That was badass. She's a badass.
She's pretty good.
Yeah, I like that. So we're gonna hopefully find more, since it is Women's History Month, and try to find some women that we can talk to, maybe that want to come on our show, that are cannabis community, women who own businesses in cannabis. We would love to have you on this month and talk about the history of what you've done. Reach out to us at WeedMan420chronicles@gmail.com. And we can, Mrs. WeedMan can reach out to you and we can get you on the show. We'd love to have you. Great job, Mrs. WeedMan.
Thanks.
History, Mrs. WeedMan. This is your month. Appreciate you. Everything you've done in the history of We've Been Together. Thanks for the history.
Sure. Thanks for the history.
You got anything else, Mrs. WeedMan?
No,
No? Nothing?
I got nothing.
You're going to end it on that?
that's it. Thanks for the history.
Well, we want to say thank you for listening, everybody. It's been it's an honor and a pleasure to be able to do this, and we love you all out there. Please take a listen to us, man, on all the platforms: Spotify, Pandora, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Venbrol, so many platforms. We appreciate you listening on all of them. Send us an email, WeedMan420chronicles@gmail.com. Send us a DM or take a look at our Instagram at WeedMan420chronicles. Twitter is WeedMan420pod. And we love you all. As Paulie always says, smoke smart, puff, puff, and away.
Puff, puff, pass.